since I became a parent on March 12th, 2009. I have been waiting for one singular moment. One moment that would define my family for generations to come. And that moment happened this week. Welcome to the Pete the Planner Show. Kristen Alanius joins us here as co-host this week. Kristen, first time on the show. How are you?
You know, I am really nervous.
Yes, you are. Now, Kristen, before I tell you about the life-changing moment that I had this week, let's go a little behind the scenes, as they say, inside baseball. And before I go inside baseball, let's go very inside baseball at what was called my first air check when I first got a radio show back in 2009.
Okay.
So here's what happened. Okay. I sat down with my executive producer. It was a gentleman by the name of Scott Roddy, who was like an old-time disc jockey, and his on-air name was Records Roddy. Scott Records Roddy. And amazing voice. And he's sitting down, and now he's in management, and he's got me as this weekend host that's doing things. And he said, I listened to your show. I was like, thanks, Records. And he said, actually, by the way, off the air radio meetings are like, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? And it's like all people are like out.
They are not like that.
No, it's true.
That's not.
And he was like, what I've noticed about your show is that you do a lot of inside baseball. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? And he was like, what it means is you're talking about the mechanics of the show on the show, and you just shouldn't do that. So it's in that spirit that I want to talk about the mechanics of this show within the show. So that was like inside baseball. Kristen, you showed up with a minute to spare to this here platform today, which is sort of my move.
Right.
And you guys all freak out. And then today show up, your mic's barely working. And so now, boy, have the turntables have turned.
Yeah, the turns do table, because I can't tell you how many times when I first started to be on this show that I would Slack Damien and be like, still don't have a link from Pete. And he would be like, he'll send it. It might be 5 minutes before the show, but he's going to send it. And I literally showed up with like 2 minutes to spare because I was still prepping the news because we're without Damien.
Do we know where Dame is? I know he's not here. Are we allowed to say where he is?
I don't know where Damien is.
I know he's off.
Right. He's not. I don't remember where.
So the moment I've been waiting for since March 12th, 2009, is for one of my children to have their school schedule arrive in my email inbox. Because even Kristen, back in 2009, email was a thing. And for that schedule to indicate they're taking a course in personal finance. Young Theodore Patrick Dunn got his schedule last week, and it said right there, personal finance. And I thought to myself, man, I'm so excited for this.
I could not be more thrilled. And I have questions and that inside baseball. I just want to know, are you going to tell him to study up on market temperance before class or not?
Wow, Kristen. There's updates on that story, too.
Of course.
You brought it up. You always tell me not to bring it up, and then you just brought it up.
I didn't bring it up. I brought up the joke.
2 more lawsuits. So I'm really excited for him to take personal finance. I'm really interested to know what professional educators teach a 7th grader about money.
You think he's going to get a fake checkbook?
That's a great question. Here's what I'm going to do, though. When he learns, however he's going to learn how to manage his money, I'm going to email the teacher, and I'm going to say just simply the following. Hey, I listened to a lot of Dave Ramsey, and you're not teaching the envelope cash system, and I find that personally offensive. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Send it from your work email, too.
I absolutely will. Here's the weird thing. Maybe not weird, maybe cool. I don't know what it is. The entire district of teachers, of which young Theodore goes, are your Moneyline participants, so they can actually call, like the teacher could call us, talk to someone from your team,
and be like, hey, help me teach these kids about money.
Yeah. Or he could call and be like, hey, some over-involved type A caramel parent called me and emailed me, and I just want to check with you all of whether that makes sense. And then you all have to, by employment obligation, be like, no, that man is right.
He's a genius, actually.
He is a genius.
He says.
Jason asked a really good question. Jason, what stadium is that? I'm not a big baseball person, but in your picture, what stadium is that? What does a 7th grader need to know about personal finance? That feels like a high school class at minimum. Yeah, it's an interesting question, but I mean, not that I'm a parenting expert, believe me, I'm not. But that's when we really hardcore started teaching our daughter about finance, because they can get little dumb jobs. Like she was a soccer ref and these sorts of things. So you got to know how the cash flows that way. Texas Rangers 2024 All-Star Game is the answer.
Cool.
Oh, Kristen, Office Olympics here today at your Moneyline HQ.
Must be nice.
Hey, you got a car, right?
Yeah, I'm going to drive 2 hours to participate in the Office Olympics to drive 2 hours back. Yeah.
Here's how we did it. Everyone had to bring a food representing a country. And then we have a series of games. We're breaking into teams, and then we're going to have the Office Olympics winner. I brought Belgian waffles to represent Belgium.
Are you worried about a workers' comp claim?
No. And Andy actually is asking the question in a different way. Andy asks, what are some of the events? They're very low key. We've got trash can basketball, which is just more of a free throw shoot. We've got eggs on spoon races. That's a little active. We've got a marker roll. We're going to have a table and you got to roll a marker without having it fall off. We've got paper airplane distance contest.
Do you have safety glasses?
Oh, Lord.
I'm just curious.
All right. Kristen, are we ready to do some things?
No.
What?
Damien's gone.
I try not to do this, but I'm going to have to do it. As one of the most influential people in the state of Indiana.
Okay.
I'm totally kidding. I mean, I am, but I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm not kidding, but I am kidding. I know, it's so awkward. Okay. What's been your favorite Olympics event so far?
I do women's rugby. Low. Yes. I follow her on social media. I just think that she's incredible and very, very, very happy for them.
Yeah, that was really awesome. My brother, my family Olympic update. My brother-in-law's swimmers have won 2 medals so far.
Nice.
Got a silver for Drew Kibler and then a silver for Alex Shackle in the relay yesterday. So that's nice. That's sort of fun.
It's so crazy to think how small the world sometimes feels. And that's one of those examples of like, someone who is there at this world event. Like, yeah.
Let's take that 2 steps further in a very weird way. Okay. And you don't know this yet. You do not know this. So there is one of our board members for your Moneyline, one of our investors and board members, was the family that runner Allie Wilson nannied for. I don't know if you know this story about 800 meter runner Allie Wilson. You're gonna, when you watch track and field, you're gonna see the story about this runner that went and changed her training and moved to Indianapolis so she could train. But then her part-time job was a nanny for a family. Okay. She nannied for one of our board members. And I didn't know that until yesterday. There was an article in the Indianapolis Star, which apparently is a newspaper. And it detailed the whole thing. And so the family's going over to watch another one of our board members currently in Paris at the Olympics, who also swam at Carmel. What are the chances?
Probably not high.
I know. Look at Danza finding religion. Danza, God day to you as well. How?
You can always count on Pete to call out your spelling mistakes.
That wasn't it. She found Jesus. That was not a spelling mistake. I think Danza's saying God day.
I don't think she is.
I believe she is.
I think that was supposed to be Inside Baseball, and she accidentally didn't hit the double O there.
God day, Danza. And God day to you, Kristen.
Okay. I'm sorry, Danza.
I don't know what I got in the tank today. This is one of those days. It could be good, could be terrible.
Great. Glad. Fantastic.
It's feeling on a razor's edge. Okay. let's do some stuff.
Okay.
What do we do now? Okay.
I sent you those 2 questions.
Yes. Let's start with, are we in a recession?
I hate this question.
Well, I mean, it technically kind of triggered this morning. A recession alert, a recession trigger went off this morning. Hold on, let me do the news story here.
Should we save this for the show, considering we don't have a third segment?
No, who cares about the radio audience? What have they ever done for me?
Nothing.
Literally, I've been in the car with my family when they've turned off my radio show. I'm like, I'll be in the car on a Sunday, it's on, and my wife was like, do we have to listen to this? And I'm like, yeah, that's...
I didn't know she wasn't a fan of Damien and I'll have to let him know.
Oh, no, I think her disdain for me really...
like we can't make up for it?
No, she likes me. As I'm told via fax. The rise in the unemployment rate brings into play the so-called SOM rule, which states that the economy is in a recession when the 3-month average of the jobless level is 0.5 percentage point higher than the 12-month low. Yeah, I mean, that for Friday to be able to sort through what in the heck that means, I can't do it.
Yeah, that sounds like gobbledygook to me. But that does bring up a really interesting point of the disconnect between statements like that, statistics like that, and how people actually feel.
Yeah, the chief economist for LPL says the latest snapshot of the labor market is consistent with a slowdown, not necessarily recession. And as we go 2 weeks in a row of not talking about politics on this show, you got to think one campaign might be shouting from the rooftops, we're in a recession starting right now.
No, yeah.
What do you think?
The tweets, well, they're not called that anymore, but they were already flying, I'm sure.
The truths.
Excuse me.
All right. Well, let's... breaking dumb news.
What?
I hate it. Right here, let's timestamp this. 10:12. No one's dead. Don't worry. It had like a someone's dead feel to it, didn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
No one's dead. I mean, lots of people are dead, but like, and some like right now, but like, that's not the news. Let's hear Kristen's laughter. It feels like a reward.
Not today.
Oh, Morgan Stanley tells wealth advisors they can pitch Bitcoin ETFs in a first for major Wall Street firms.
Great.
Let's start.
Doug's excited.
Okay, let me start the show. Everyone calm down, Kristen.
I am as calm as they come.
3, 2, 1. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here's how the show works. You email us askpete@petetheplanner.com. That's askpete@petetheplanner.com. And here's what happens. We'll answer your question. We got 2 such emails today, and they will be the basis for our conversation. A conversation cannot be one-sided. There needs to be another voice, another set of ears. And that's why I welcome Kristen Lanius to the stage. Kristen, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm delightful. How are you?
Good, but no one ever says that.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about it?
No.
Let's do this. Let's punt the show today, and let's go deep inside of what's happening in your life.
No,
Kristen,
I don't want to.
How's your life?
I feel like I'm pulling a Peter Dunn, which is what you usually do when we're recording the show, is you're trying to not look at your email because you're waiting on news that could like make or break your day. And I am in that boat currently, waiting on news that's going to probably ruin my weekend. And I'm trying to not look.
Professional news?
No. Well,
Personally.
hopefully not. I mean,
hey, Kristen, I did schedule a 4 p.m. with you today.
Great.
Or anyway, we're on the radio. Kristen, email came in. Let's address it. Hi, Kristen and Co. I recently sold my house for a much larger sum than I expected and relocated due to a job change. Can I get a timeout here?
Dame's not here, so no.
Oh, well,
Great.
I'll take one. So here's the thing. What's interesting about this first sentence is this question can go a lot of different directions, but it can either be really good or really bad, because although they sold for a large amount, it just depends where they moved.
Exactly. I had someone I was working with last year who this exact scenario happened to them, but they moved to a place that's like 3 times as expensive. So you just never know.
With this new job, I'm making about 10% more than I did before the move. Also, it's another timeout. That could be indicative of moving to a city where there's higher wages, cost of living is higher. So again, we're right on the edge. Given the uncertainty of the new area, I decided to rent first to ensure I pick the right place to settle down. I know I'll need a significant portion of the proceeds from the house sale when I eventually buy a new home. I'm trying to balance spending on the now with saving for my potential future home purchase. I've done without for most of my 20s and want to buy a few things for myself, but I also want to ensure I don't dip into these funds too much. My questions are these. How do I decide how much is okay to spend now? Where should I put the funds until I'm ready to buy? The soonest I would buy is in a year, but I'm fine renting for longer. How do I protect these funds from being spent once I start? Thanks, Gladys. I think it's a fake name because this person says they're in the 20s. I've not met a Gladys in their 20s.
I have not either, no.
I don't even think I've met a Rick in their 20s. All right. So, Kristen, where shall we begin?
You know, Pete, I think with some of our prior experiences, the thing that scares me the most is their third question, which is how do I protect these funds from being spent if I start? Because how many times in your financial wellness advising, planning, whatever word, career, have you seen someone just like, and it's gone?
I've done that personally. So here's the theory on that is, okay, let's say you got a chunk of money and then you spend it on a dumb idea. And then the next idea comes along that's actually better than the dumb idea. So it feels justified because it's not as dumb as the dumb idea. So you spend it again, but it's not objectively smart. It's actually still dumb. It's just lower on the dumb spectrum. And so I don't know. I think that's the most dangerous question, but I also think it's the easiest question to answer, which is, oh wait, you pursed your lips.
I'm waiting to hear the answer. What is the answer?
I think the answer is you move whatever you're putting for the down payment off to the side and put it in an account that you don't transact in any way or shape or form.
But so yes, while I agree with that, theoretically, it's so hard to actually do that in the technology-driven world that we live in. It takes a couple clicks. It takes 3 clicks for you to justify linking the cash reserve account you have at Betterment to your checking account with your local bank. And then suddenly you've made a withdrawal and it's there. And it's just too easy.
It is too easy, but I think I like to call this it's the envelope method. I've come up with this. There's 3 envelopes and it's virtual cash. I have not come up with an envelope method, by the way. There's 3 things. Number 1, you can put the down payment money in a separate account. Mm-hmm. You also have to make sure that your emergency fund is separate from that and is left. And then the third one is the live a little. I don't know, but where I get nervous is where someone has like these high interest bearing accounts, like a 5% Betterment account, and they just pool all their money there. Their emergency funds there, their down payment money's there, their fun money, as the kids call. A lot of the kids are calling it that these days. Everyone's calling it that. Mm-hmm, and then, Kristen, to your point, that conduit back to your checking account gets real convenient, real fast, and that's where I get nervous.
Yeah, I do think that the funds have to be kept separate. I think this person needs to know, what does emergency savings look like with my new reality? To your point, maybe the cost of living is higher here. So even though they might need less because they're not a homeowner, maybe they need more because general expenses are higher. They do need to decide how much is okay to spend, which is one of the things they explicitly asked us that we've conveniently just kind of gone around so far. But then, I mean, yeah, putting it in the remaining funds that you don't want to spend, maybe you open a totally separate account and you can only go in person like certain hosts of this show.
That's what I like to do. You know, this is actually, there's a tricky part to this is, how much should I put towards the down payment of the home? This is really, really a very difficult question because we're in a very dynamic time with what housing prices are going to do within the next 12 to 18 months. This is a prediction. I know we're not a prediction show. You're going to see housing prices take off like nuts in the next 12 to 18 months. So whatever they set aside is not going to be enough 12 to 18 months from now.
Right. Yeah, because interest rates come down, but then in theory, the pool of buyers gets larger. I think some people are making it seem like it's going to be maybe more than it is, and we don't know exactly how that'll work. But this can be dangerous too, but maybe just looking at, hey, if you're feeling like you're liking the area you're in now, what would it take to get into a home? And then aligning that with when do you want to be mortgage free as well? Because this person, I think it sounds like they're in their 30s because it says I spent most of my 20s without. I could be wrong about that. But if they're in their 30s, if you say, hey, I want to be mortgage free by the earliest I would want to retire, 59 and a half, are we already working toward a more condensed mortgage repayment timeline than your 30-year conventional loan?
I would love to know too if these people did move to a more expensive city. The clues are kind of there, but
right.
I don't know, because it's quite possible. I don't think it's reality, but it's quite possible they moved to a less expensive city and got a higher wage, like the double, right?
True.
And then that would be good. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem that way. So, Kristen, to your earliest point you made here, the danger in all of this is that they don't have a good strategy. And so then they just whittle that account down. And then 18 months from now, they're not in big trouble, but they're in a less advantageous housing situation.
Exactly. And then 5 years from now, they're going to hate today them for not being more proactive about this. This is one of those, like, the potential for them to say, I wish I would have in about 5 years from now. The threat has never been greater for that conversation.
So Kristen identifies self-hate as that was aggressive.
Well, it's true.
Well, so in Indiana, where we broadcast this show from, a reasonable cost of living, all things considered, and I realize that's a relative term. What you'll find is people from very expensive real estate markets like New York or in LA or San Francisco or wherever, they will sell a home there, move here, not necessarily get a wage increase because that's not likely to happen based on average wages here, but they're likely to go into a market with lower priced homes. And with that we take a break and we try to stop the self-hate. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a break. Come back. We've got another question. This one's about money conversations, I think. We'll do that next, right here on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. All right, well, we did that, right?
Sure did.
Who needs Dame? Who needs that guy? We do. Yes, I was just thinking. Sorry. Yes, we absolutely do. Who do you think wins the Office Olympics today? Who do you think here is good at parlor games?
If Oz was there, I would say her.
Yeah.
But because she's not, I feel like it's a little more difficult. And I'm going to go, I feel like Angela. Is she there today?
I haven't seen her yet. I think Lubs wins everything.
Is there a gift card on the line?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm in charge, so I don't know. Here's a funny story about one of our coworkers. Kind of. So our lovely coworker Oz, who just moved to Rochester, she's trying to make friends. Like, there's no one better in the world at making friends. I don't know if you've ever been a young single person who moves to a new city and then you're forced to go make friends. But Oz and her partner moved to this new place, and she already made friends in one place, and now she's making new friends in this place. And so last weekend or 2 weekends ago, she had some friends that are in a volleyball league or something like that. Now, Oz was a dominant volleyball player in middle school and high school, and she's 6 feet tall. I was
going to say, yeah, because she's like 10 foot tall.
Can you imagine that you're just some fun young single in Rochester, and you meet a new person like on the cusp of, your weekly volleyball game, and that young person is 6 feet tall and a dominant volleyball player? It's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a hard position to be into, because when you're trying to make friends, you don't want to like annihilate them at the game that you're trying to play. So
she's like friends until she smashed him in the face with a kill shot. Okay. Maybe that's just funny to me. I've been laughing about that for a week and a half, and it might not actually be at all interesting to anyone else. But that's most of my life. Okay. Kristen, what are you doing this weekend?
I'm hosting dinner tonight. I have 2 like family parties. I know tomorrow. And then I can't remember what I'm doing Sunday. Potentially there could be big things on the horizon. I'll know at like 3 p.m. today.
Well, gee, Christmas.
I know.
What are you making for dinner tonight? Is it a pitch in or a potluck? What do the Hoosiers call it? What do we call it?
What do we call it?
I say like a pitch in.
I call it BYOB.
Wow.
So last night at like 9 p.m., my dad and my sister called me. They live across the street from each other. And they were like, so are we doing this dinner? And I said, I guess. And I was like, whose house? Are we going to go to Dad's house? And they were like, oh, we can come to your house. I'm like, but you guys live across the street from each other. So you're going to come to my, whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I am in very on brand making burgers on the Traeger.
Nice. I think this weekend do you want to roll your eyes now or until the story? Oh, wait until the story happens.
I will try to do neither. Go ahead.
I purchased at Costco some pre-cooked octopus that's not an eye roll. That's a vomit look. What? It's delicious. And I'm going to grill it and do like some Mediterranean spices and whatnot. So that's what I'm doing this weekend.
Here's my problem with foods like that.
Okay.
How do you eat something that I feel like I couldn't touch? I would be grossed out to touch it. How do you eat it?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, have you ever eaten shark?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe your whole thing holds water.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Chris and I saw a review of our show the other day online, and it said something to the effect, the host thinks he's very funny, but I'm not sure he is. And I actually have no problem with that synopsis of the show, you being the host. Kristen, let's get back to the show. Dear Kristen and Co., I hear and am trying to heed your warnings about the importance of having money conversations. I get that they're important, but I'm struggling with the how. How often should my wife and I have these conversations? How should these conversations go? What should we cover? Should some conversations happen more frequently than others? And then how do we actually make change when I find areas of concern? And it just says when we find areas of concern, which I think is important for me to correct. Mm-hmm. Also, can you please settle a debate? No, I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. My wife and I are married with no kids. Sounds like a cat lady to me. Oh, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I mean, anyway, I don't think we need life insurance yet. She does. Who's right? Okay, I can weigh in on all of this. Kristen, where shall we go?
I think we go with the one that's the most difficult, which is how do we actually make change when we find areas of concern? I feel like there is no conversation change that is more difficult than when you're in a healthy, committed relationship and you need to make personal financial changes for your future relationship, but nobody wants to like deprive the other person of today's joys in whatever form of budget reduction we might be doing, for example. I think that's the hardest thing that couples face that are actually having conversations about money.
Yeah, I think there has to be like a catalyst conversation to trigger the rest of the conversations.
Say more.
So I appreciate that this person, let's call them Lupe.
Okay.
Let's say Lupe wrote us and said, I want to have more conversations. And so if you just go cold turkey and you just start having conversations out of nowhere with no triggering catalyst event, I think it's ineffective. And it's actually really stressful for the other person that may not feel that way. Right. So I like this idea. I sort of thought through this a few years ago. I don't remember when because I'm an elder. And it's this idea of like, what is the perfect catalyst financial conversation to have with your significant other? And Kristen, it might look a little bit like this. I'm not asking you to role play. And I'm certainly not asking you to imagine for a moment that we're in a relationship, but here's how it might look like.
Okay.
I would come home to our homestead and I would say, what's wrong?
I can't picture you on a homestead, but go ahead.
No, I had a pocket knife the other day.
That is true. That was very off brand.
No, I didn't put it in my pocket. I carried it in my hand. So it looked like
that was on brand.
I would say, honey, I don't know what I would say. Can we talk about money for a few minutes this weekend? So the first thing, you can't have a conversation in the moment you bring it up. You just can't do it because the other person may not be ready for it. Kristen?
I feel like that depends though, because Pete, I'm an anxious individual. So if you come to me and you say, and this is about any type of conversation, like let's actually take the dynamic here, which is that you're my employer. If today, after we got done with this, you were like, hey, Kristen, we actually need to have a one-on-one on Monday. Deets more to come. I'd be like, oh, what?
Totally fair. Okay. So totally fair. Let's do this. Kristen, honey, bear, I want to have a conversation this weekend about money, but if you prefer to have it now, I just want to talk through maybe some things that I'm doing that are stressing you out, or maybe I can share some thoughts about how we handle money. Like, it can be now. It doesn't matter, but he just needs to give the person an option to get their head around it. I think it goes with asking very pointed and critical questions about yourself to your partner. So I would say something like, hey, I know we were raised by different people, and so we have different money habits, and we've developed them independently. What is something that I do financially that makes you uncomfortable or drives you crazy? I think that's the direction you go. And then you got to hit yourself, and you got to listen, and you can't be defensive 5 or 6 different times. What's something you think I waste money on? Where do you think my way of doing things will lead us down a bad path? And you got to just bite your lip. And you got to take it, and you can't go point for point, and you can't be defensive. And then you say, hey, is it cool? Can we flip this around and sort of be introspective about my feelings about some of your things? Now that sounds manipulative, but if in the right relationship, it should be okay.
Yeah. And I think that what's really interesting in those situations is it's easier to have hard conversations. This is not going to come out the way I mean it, but here it is. When you have a common enemy, which is that if, for example, let's say in this scenario, I tend to avoid money conversations. And maybe that's because I was raised in a house where we didn't talk about money. Like we don't have any money conversations. Money's not for kids to worry about, those sorts of things. If you and I can agree that that wasn't the healthiest dynamic, it makes the conversation about how that affects me and that relationship easier because we have a common, I'm using the word enemy, which sounds aggressive, but we have a common enemy in the way that I was brought up to have money conversations. I think it makes it easier to have today's conversation.
Here's what we're going to do in the next segment. We got a few minutes left in this segment. I want to talk about how identifying all of the stakeholders in your financial life will help you actually have these conversations better.
Okay.
I think very frequently and I'll get there in the next segment, but while personal finance is personal, there's so many other players in your life that sometimes you accidentally ignore them. So back to this question, what is the right cadence? What is the right frequency?
Yeah.
I've always thought once a month is probably appropriate, and any more than that, it's unlikely people with 2 different money personalities can actually get away with that conversation more frequently.
For the most part, I agree with that. But I do think during periods of change, whether that's home buying, family planning, what are other big things that couples are facing? Like if there's a loss, those sorts of things, you might need to check in more frequently. If there's a job change, you might need to be checking in with a little bit more frequency. If you've pre-established kind of a cadence, a routine, and then there's a big variable that changes, might need to be a little bit more than that while we settle into a new reality.
Let me, next segment, I'm actually going to take some business lessons to talk about stakeholders, but I'm going to do it here too as well. Not that I'm some business expert. Believe me, I'm not. But here's what I learned. And it was criticism levied upon me by a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, you create a strategy, but then all attention has to turn to execution, not recasting the strategy all the time when bumps happen. And I think financially, sometimes couples will come up with a strategy, set out the execution, hit a bump, pivot too early, not stick with it, re-strategize, recast, re-strategize. That's a really bad idea. That the original strategy, if sound, which is a pretty big if sound, there has to be a true dedication to the execution, or I was going to say all is lost, which sounds incredibly dramatic, but arguably you spin your tires.
Yeah, I completely agree. It has to be a major life change where I feel like we would need to make a pivot. And then the last thing that they asked us to settle a debate, I know we said we didn't want to, but you probably need life insurance even if you don't have kids, especially if you're younger and doing your financial life together. You probably still need it. I
agree. I don't even think, let's say you plan on never having kids.
Right.
I think you still need life insurance. Yeah. It's that life insurance continues to be one of the least comfortable things to ever talk about, because a person must accept their mortality and then bet on it, which is a pretty healthy thing to do, because you're not going to lose. You're going to be right. It's undefeated. Grim Reaper. Anyway, coming up after the break, who are your stakeholders in your life? We'll talk about that next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. Look at me creating a third segment on the fly like a radio professional.
It's almost like that's your favorite way to prepare for the show.
Scott Records Roddy spinning the golden oldies. Kristen, really, that's what happens at radio stations.
What are golden oldies?
Shut your precious mouth. You don't know what golden oldies are?
I've not heard those words used together, I don't believe.
Oh my God. Well, you're like a zygote. How old are you? What? You don't know what zygote is?
Okay, first of all, we all know I'm 30.
Let's not age shame me, because that's what that just turned into.
Well, you asked.
Clearly didn't. No one heard. Hey, by the way, how many years are you?
Did you not just ask me that?
I didn't ask you how old you were. Maybe I did.
You did.
Shh, calm down. Anyway, walk around the halls of any radio station, and it's just like, hey, Ace, how you doing? It's like, hi, Ricky. And it's everyone's radio voices. It's like a clown convention. I'm not kidding.
I'm easily overstimulated when it comes to sound. I feel like that would be my personal working nightmare.
It's weird. I think you have a very great radio voice. It's just really like, it's approachable and it's calm, but I would never say you have like a classic radio voice, because I don't think you do.
I do not.
For a very long time, I didn't think I had a classic radio voice, but what ends up happening over time is it kind of develops. And so I'll be places where like, man, listen to that radio voice saying it to me. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't feel that way, but I don't know. Maybe I walk into a room like, hello, hey, you're the 9th caller. Tickets to the fair. Anyway.
You have several different voices, actually.
They're all going through my head. They're all going through my head. And they all tell me to eat more pie. That's the thing. And that's why watching the weight come back. All right. So, Kristen, I've been keeping score today. I don't know if you knew this. You've laughed twice at me.
I'll make sure to not repeat that mistake.
What? You're not having a brat girl summer, I can tell you that.
I don't know what that means either. I've seen that, but
we've had a team event the other day, and someone typed brat girl summer, and I read it as brat girl summer, and I was ready for a cookout.
Right on.
I was like, hey, Charlie Murphy's cooking Johnsonville brats. What's the name, Charlie? It's an old commercial that you wouldn't know because you're 10 years old. Respectfully. Very respectfully. VR.
There it is. VR.
Okay, let's do the segment, and I'm going to have to just figure it out as we go. In 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner Show. A very special Pete the Planner Show today. I don't, and it's actually not that special. Hi, Kristen.
Hello, Pete.
Kristen, from time to time, I am tasked by the minds at the Indianapolis Business Journal to craft for them 750 meaningful American words that can tickle their readers and delight them. And so I did so for next week. And here's what I came up with, and I want to walk you through it. Feel free to beat it up. It's already on the way to publication. So if it's stupid, then I'm just preparing myself for the feedback.
Right on.
Okay. I typically, not especially not on this show and not in my column, I don't talk about what I actually do for a living, ever.
Fair.
Right? I mean, like, I'm the CEO of a fintech company. That's what I am now. I do some other things, but that's really what I am.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I've learned based on that role in the last 2 years that I never thought was my actual job. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I may, because I'm going.
Yeah.
The job of a chief executive officer is to understand the wants and needs of all the different stakeholders of a business and find alignment and find a way to deliver on those wants and needs, balance the right way without alienating those wants and needs of various stakeholders along the way.
Okay.
That's the job, right? And so when you start this, you don't realize that's the job. But here's some examples. Who are the stakeholders of this business? There's the participants. So we around here, those are the employees of the businesses we serve. We try to help their financial lives. We do it all the time. It's great. There's the employers who purchase our services, and we're trying to help their businesses by helping the personal finances of their employees. Mm-hmm. There's our distribution partners. There's our own employees. Mm-hmm. There are our shareholders, because we have investors here. And then there's the board of directors. So all of those, we're all trying to help people and make money, right? That's sort of the general direction, make people better and make money in the process. And if you index too hard for one of those elements, the other ones start to get wonky, and it can be not fun at all. But that's my job is literally that, to take all of these elements and figure out how they fit together. That is my job. Now, in personal finance, as you all hear, personal finance is personal. True. However, Kristen, I believe people would do themselves a service by understanding who the stakeholders in their personal finances are. And it's more entities and parties than you might think. So I'm going to give you a list, and this is where you can say yay or nay, I disagree.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, every person who lives in your home currently.
Okay. So you're saying even that could be more traditional, meaning it's like, your husband, your wife, your kids, but in multi-generational households, you're saying that's potentially a parent, that's a grandchild. You're saying every person that lives in the house. Your
decisions, your personal financial decisions impact that person. And theoretically, you have to account for what their wants and needs are because you cohabitate. So would you agree with that?
I believe that I would agree with that.
Okay, well, let me take it a little step further that really hits home for you. And I made this point in my column. Also your pets. And I know that sounds crazy, but I believe pets are stakeholders in your financial life because they require financial attention. And oddly enough, they are incredibly dependent on your financial decisions for their own well-being. What do you think about that?
I'm obsessed with that.
Really?
Of course I agree with that.
Wow.
I think in pause, because of the way we treat...
In terms of like a pet's paws?
No. In terms of the way that we treat pet ownership, in generally speaking, because I would quite literally do whatever I needed to financially for my pets. And so many people feel the same way. So to ignore them as, to your point, stakeholders, I don't think best serves your financial life. So I am full support.
Okay. Next up.
Okay.
Your local butcher.
What?
is a stakeholder. That's a joke. Okay.
Oh my.
You could have laughed.
I could have.
How about people who previously you've cohabitated with or lived with, other people in your life, like someone you co-parent with, an elderly parent, an aging parent, a grown adult child? These are other stakeholders in your life that your decisions, to some degree, have to account for what's going on with them to some degree.
You know, that's really interesting because in some of those categories, I'm nodding my head yes. And in other examples that you just gave, I am also nodding my head yes, but thinking, okay, but how in the world? Because the co-parenting one, for example, I agree with you. I think that when you have a shared interest in a child, then the other person's financial life is important to you. But practically speaking, how does that actually work?
Well, I am not an expert on co-parenting outside of a marriage, but I've seen a lot of it. You know, you see a lot of people saying, okay, we're going to split the cost for the soccer season and for this trip to Sandusky, Ohio for a soccer tournament, but it's your weekend. Or no, this one happens to be my weekend. And that's really complicated. Now, I will say the one entity, I only have 750 words. I mean, arguably this is a book, right? But the 750 words, I can't say sometimes your ex-spouse without kids remains a stakeholder in your life, but most of the times they do not. They kind of move on. Now, the next ones are a little wild, and people could slap them down pretty easily. Your past, your present, and your future are stakeholders in your life. The debts that you've created, the past you've created for yourself, has an impact on your life. Your present needs and the lifestyle you choose has an impact. And if you keep breathing, called the future, there are needs and wants that must be met there too. So I think in personal finances, you can interestingly bring up abstract things like the past, present, and future.
That one I completely agree with. But what's most interesting about that one in particular is you're forced to care about your past, present, and future differently, depending on the circumstances. While to your point, I don't know that should be, you should care equally about past, present, and future. But depending on what's happening in your life today, as we see all the time with the end user that we serve, like you just mentioned, our stakeholders, your present sometimes demands all of that attention, but it is important to look at the past and the future as well.
And then there's two other ones that I've listed, and again, 750 words. I wish it was more exhaustive.
Sure.
Two other ones I've listed for both the head of a business and the head of a household. Your community at large.
Oh.
Right? I feel an obligation to the stakeholder that is the community of which we serve. And sometimes that is Central Indiana. Sometimes that's a global community. And I think even as a personal finance, as an individual dealing with their own personal finances, your community is a stakeholder as well. And then the final one is really out there, and it's because I have a liberal arts degree, and I had to take a philosophy course from Professor Don Carroll at Hanover College. I believe the greater good, the concept of the greater good, is a stakeholder. So in the 19th century, there were two philosophers, Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, that came up with this concept of the greater good, and you're serving this greater good. I believe both as a business and I believe as an individual, one must serve the greater good. So that's my stakeholders column that comes out next week. Is it not terrible, right?
No, not at all. I actually really like the concept.
Oh my gosh, I did it. I impressed you for the first time in decades. Coming up after the break, the biggest waste of money of the week and the news. I'm Pete the Planner. This is Pete the Planner Show. I kind of liked it too. Kristen, here, you've put out enough content though, which I hate the word content, but you've put out enough stuff in the last several years that when it comes off the tips, if you will, if it comes off the fingers and it feels good, it doesn't necessarily mean that people will receive it well and or care about it. And that's the feeling in my heart and soul right now is I really like that column. but I'm not so sure anyone will care.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's so crazy the difference between something you think will perform well and people will or should be interested in, and their appetite for what you have to say. Sometimes there is misalignment.
Look at you. Look at you. Did you get the email you wanted?
I'm not looking. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Can you at least tell me after the show the email you're looking for?
Absolutely, I can.
Okay. You're going to have a big announcement on the show here in the next few weeks, right?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, I'm really excited about that.
I have some.
Oh, stop.
I have some things I have to do. Like, the announcement is dependent on me buttoning some things up that I have not yet, but working.
I'm very excited about that, by the way.
I am very excited about that as well.
Give you your flowers, as they say, right? Do you say that? Or is that too cool?
You say that.
I don't say that.
You do say that. Last year at our all company retreat, we had to do that.
I like that the retreat was just like it was a restaurant.
I mean, it was at a restaurant.
Okay. Let's do this. Do you have news items? I haven't even talked about this.
Of course I do.
Okay, well, sorry. You showed up 10 seconds before the show started. What am I supposed to do?
Because I was working on the news. Damien's job is hard.
Oh my gosh. He's just giggling wherever he is right now.
Oh yeah, he's loving it because he reminded me on Monday that I needed to get news articles together. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I hate it when you're gone. And then he asked me on Wednesday if he wanted me to, if I wanted him to do the news articles for me. I said, no, I got it. And I should have said yes. I regret that decision.
Speaking of news, there will be news next week out of these halls.
Ah, yes.
That will hit the internets.
Lots of inside baseball today.
Is that inside baseball?
It is.
What are you, Scott Records Roddy? What would be your radio name? Miscellaneous.
I mean, that's what everybody's always called me.
Yeah.
And my sister, but.
Fun news coming out of these halls next week. Stay tuned. Okay. I'm loving it. I'm ready to go. 3, 2, 1. This week's biggest waste of money of the week right here on the Pete the Planner show is friend AI pendant. Socially awkward? Are you a terrible conversationalist? Do you lack any personality traits that other humans might find interesting and want to engage with?
It does not say that.
Yes, it does. Artificial intelligence wants to solve... By the way, how dare you interrupt me?
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. Artificial intelligence wants to solve those embarrassing problems. In a world where technology is increasingly leading to loneliness. Can I get a timeout?
I guess.
I buy that.
Yeah.
I 100% buy that idea. That social media makes people less social and lonelier.
It might.
It does. It's also attempting to solve the problem it created with friend. And this next phrase makes me want to die. An always listening AI pendant. Friend is not here to boost productivity, order your lunch, call an Uber, or write your term paper. Friend is just what it says on the 10. A silicone friend that offers words of encouragement or idle conversation or collaborative brainstorming. Creator Avi Schiffman isn't out to replace real friends. Just augment your friend circle with a pendant you wear around your neck. It doesn't require a subscription. It works over Bluetooth and only responds via text, just like you're in real life friends. Kristen, walking around, you got a pendant that's always listening. What would you pay for the always listening friend that makes you less socially awkward?
First of all, that's not going to happen.
Wait, you're not going to be less socially awkward?
Ha, very funny.
Oh.
But this, oh my word, this is going to be, I feel like it's going to be cheaper than I'm thinking. So let's go, it's silicone. Let's go $300.
Your logic was spot on, but you missed. Your logic
had to go lower.
$99. You know, here's the thing. I think this is a terrible idea.
Correct.
It might work But I also acknowledge, like, if for some reason really someone is isolated or they're lonely and this serves them, I don't want to make fun of them. Like, I just don't want to do it because that's great that they've got some sort of companionship.
I guess.
I mean, like, hey, life's hard. Love who you love, even if it's a silicone circle around your neck.
Yeah.
Hey, Kristen, what's in the news this week?
I'm so glad you asked. A new bill aims to make it easier for disabled individuals to save money. Able accounts provide a tax advantage way for disabled individuals to save money outside of asset limit requirements set by federal assistance programs, while also assessing certain tax advantages. They function similarly to 529s. The growth is usually tax-free. If used for qualified expenses, then you don't pay taxes on that, those withdrawals either. But to date, about 170,000 people with disabilities have saved an average of over $11,000 each through Able accounts. Senator Bob Casey, who I believe is from Pennsylvania, serves as the chairman of the Special Committee on Aging and is proposing a few different bills to expand the current legislation, including the Employment Flexibility Act, which would make it possible for employers to contribute to an employee's Able account instead of a 401k. He's also proposing a bill that allows employers or government programs to make direct deposits to Able accounts. And finally, he's proposing a bill focused exclusively on the education surrounding Able accounts due to what they feel is inadequate participation in this type of offering.
There are a lot of esoteric financial instruments all around the world, and especially here in the United States. This is a wonderful program, a earth-shatteringly wonderful program that no one knows about. Like, no one knows about. And it's, like you said, most akin to a 529. Like, it's the closest thing. In fact, some of the businesses that administer 529 plans also administer Able accounts. And there does need to be more attention to them. And there needs to be more tax favorability. There needs to be more accessibility. Secure 2.0, I'm not sure whether they accounted for additional access or benefits of Able accounts, but they should, because I'm with Senator Casey here. I think that's great.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so hard because an account like this, if you're not the kind of person who needs it, you probably have no exposure. And then if you become the type of person who needs it, how do you get information about something you didn't know existed in the first place when you're hit with a new reality that is potentially life-changing? So that's what's so hard, is how do you get the information for the people who need it when they need it? I still think even if they pass this, there are challenges here logistically.
Yeah, and so those challenges, as I try to describe them here, are anecdotal. This is an anecdotal description. Let's say you find yourself in a situation where you have a special need, or you are considered different able-bodied than someone else. Sometimes there are direct negative financial repercussions and ramifications of that reality. Mm-hmm. And so while this is a beautiful way to save money towards that, it doesn't necessarily mean you have all this extra change going around that you can deposit into these accounts because you're dealing with the reality of your disability. So exactly. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be around, but that definitely dampens the impact of these programs. So what else is in the news this week?
This article, Pete, leads with surge pricing isn't just for Uber anymore.
Oh, no.
So The Cut wrote this article suggesting that corporations have had the technology to roll out more highly targeted pricing models for years, according to Lindsay Owens, the executive director of Groundwork Collaborative. And Owens shares that when customers are more isolated, they're less price sensitive. So the concern is that surveillance pricing, the more broad term, is not new, but there are no federal laws that explicitly ban it. However, the FTC has broad authority to regulate, quote, unfair and deceptive practices and acts, unquote, and is starting to crack down. So they brought up a few examples of what's the difference between what would be considered fair game with dynamic or surge pricing and what would be considered predatory. And the author of this article brought up a couple things that I thought were really interesting. And the first one is, what if Uber started charging you a higher price if your phone battery was low and you were not in your home city?
I'm uncomfortable.
Right? It made me so nervous. Or what if you were being dropped off in an expensive neighborhood? So they were just like, well, this person can afford to pay more. I didn't like this, but I think it's an important conversation because as someone who was stranded waiting for an Uber based on dynamic pricing, at one point, I still couldn't even get an Uber last week. But at one point, the 20-minute ride due to dynamic pricing was going to be $136.
What if, let's get creepier, you're a 19-year-old young woman,
right,
in an area of town that is somehow deemed to be not as safe, and therefore the male standing next to you that happens to be 26 that knows all the great places to go, he would have less pricing because he's less at risk and in the need of a ride. Yeah, that's awful. I don't care for that.
I'm sorry, but I read it and I couldn't not talk about it.
Do you have a quick one to end the show with?
Yeah, I saw an article yesterday that the cost of living estimate for Social Security was just released. Did you see that amount?
I didn't see it. Can I guess?
Yes, estimate.
It's going to be a lot lower than it's been in previous years. I'm going to go 4.7%.
2.6%.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, that's not great.
Yep. So more to come on that most likely, but.
Yeah, no joke. Okay. Great. All right. Let's do this. Let's not talk to each other for a little bit. Okay. Like a week. How's that?
Deal.
Great. Listeners, thank you for your ears. I'm sorry. Dame should be back next week.
I believe.
Okay. No one knows. I haven't checked the file. All right. That's all I've got this week on the Pete the Planner Show. Send you good vibes. Good vibes are all this in the budget. I'm Pete the Planner. Such an awkward end to the show.
That was something.
Christmas. I did just get a personal email in the last 10 seconds of the show that I found myself reading.
I just checked my text messages and I don't have any that are about the thing.
Okay, let's get off because I want to hear what this. Let's get off there because I want to hear what this is.
Okay, fine.
Should I be excited for you?
Maybe. I mean, it's not going to matter. It's moot.
Moot. I love a good moot. The Office Olympics is about to fire off out there.
Uh-oh, you're in charge.
Is it like I am I'm fairly, as we all know, I'm very rarely in charge of anything around here. However, I volunteered to do this. I did.
Who pressured you into that, Jillian?
Well, Ellie and Leah were like, hey, do you want to do this? I was like, you know what? I'll do this.
Did they ask you this week?
Last week.
Oh, that's even more surprising.
Yeah. Anyway, so I got to go. Anyway, but my point was this. I'm going to go beat everyone badly.
Deal.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Stay getting money.